Hello, Whispering Bee family. Today's story begins with a truth we often learn too late. The worst betrayals don't come from enemies. They come from the people who build your dreams with you, only to steal them when you're not looking. Stay with me and listen closely, because what happened next will change everything. There are some betrayals so complete, so perfectly executed, that they don't just break you. They erase you. Imagine waking up one morning as the co-founder of a thriving tech startup, and by noon you are locked out of your own office, your bank accounts are empty, and the two people you trusted most in the world are standing together wearing your dreams like a costume. That was Elena Vargas's Tuesday. And the worst part, she never saw it coming. Elena had built her life on two unshakable truths. First, hard work pays off. Second, the people you love will stand beside you when it matters. By the time she turned 29, she had proven the first truth 1,000 times over. Late nights that bled into early mornings, meals skipped, sleep sacrificed, social life reduced to quick coffee runs and hurried phone calls. She had poured every ounce of herself into building something real, something that mattered. A tech startup focused on small business solutions. Clean, elegant, necessary. The company was called Elevation. The name meant something to her. It represented lifting people up, helping small businesses rise above their limitations. Every feature they built, every line of code they wrote, every client they signed was about making someone else's life easier. Elena believed in that mission with her whole heart. She believed that business could be a force for good. That success did not have to come at the expense of integrity. She had started Elevation from nothing, literally nothing. A laptop, a dream, and a credit card she maxed out 3 times in the first year. She worked from coffee shops because she could not afford office space. She pitched to investors who looked right through her like she was invisible. She heard no more times than she could count, but she kept going because she believed in what she was building. And she had not done it alone. Ryan Mitchell entered her life during a networking event she almost skipped. She had been exhausted that night, running on 4 hours of sleep and determination. But something told her to go, to show up, to try one more time. Ryan was presenting a workshop on scaling startups. He was polished, confident, articulate, but it was not the presentation that caught her attention. It was the conversation afterward. While everyone else was networking with the big names in the room, Ryan noticed her sitting alone reviewing notes. He walked over, introduced himself, and asked what she was working on. Most people asked that question as a formality. Ryan actually listened to her answer. She told him about Elevation, about her vision for helping small businesses streamline their operations, about the struggles she was facing with funding and market fit. She expected him to nod politely and walk away. Instead, he sat down and started asking real questions, smart questions. The kind that showed he understood not just business but the specific challenges she was facing. By the end of the night, they had exchanged numbers. By the end of the week, they had met for coffee 3 times. By the end of the month, Ryan had joined Elevation as a co-founder. It made sense. Ryan had experience Elena lacked. He had connections in the tech world. He knew how to talk to investors, how to structure deals, how to navigate the politics of scaling a company. He was brilliant, charismatic, and ambitious in all the right ways. He understood her vision because he helped shape it. They were a team, a partnership built on mutual respect, shared goals, and something deeper, something that felt like forever. The romantic part came later. It was not a grand gesture or a dramatic moment. It was quiet, natural. They were working late one night, debugging code that refused to cooperate. Elena was frustrated, ready to throw her laptop across the room. Ryan made her laugh, reminded her why they were doing this. Then he looked at her, really looked at her, and said, "You are the most brilliant person I have ever met." He kissed her just like that. No hesitation, no fear. And she kissed him back. 6 months later, he proposed. Not in some fancy restaurant or exotic location. In their office. The same place where they had celebrated their first major client. He got down on one knee between 2 desks covered in empty coffee cups and tangled charger cables and asked her to build a life with him, not just a company. She said yes without hesitation. Why would not she? Ryan was more than her business partner. He was the man who held her hand through investor meetings when her voice shook. The one who brought her coffee at 3 in the morning when they were chasing deadlines. The one who believed in her when she struggled to believe in herself. Then there was Christy. Christy Jennings had been Elena's best friend since their sophomore year of college. They met in an economics class, bonded over terrible professors and even worse dining hall food. Christy was loud where Elena was quiet, bold where Elena was cautious. She pushed Elena out of her comfort zone, made her laugh, made her feel seen. They survived terrible roommates together, brutal exams, heartbreaks, and hangovers. They had inside jokes that made no sense to anyone else. They had plans for the future that included being in each other's weddings, raising kids in the same neighborhood, growing old on rocking chairs side by side. Christy was the sister Elena never had. The person who knew her fears, her insecurities, the dreams she did not dare speak out loud. When Elena started Elevation, Christy was not just supportive. She was involved. She helped with marketing strategies, attended networking events, introduced Elena to potential investors. She stayed up late brainstorming campaign ideas. She celebrated every win and mourned every loss. She was family. So when Ryan suggested bringing Christy on board officially as their head of operations, Elena did not think twice. It made sense. Christy understood the brand. She believed in the mission. And having her there meant Elena could trust the people around her completely. That was her first mistake. Trust, it turned out, was the crack in the foundation. And Ryan and Christy had been quietly widening it for months. It started small, so small Elena barely noticed. Documents she did not remember signing. Meetings Ryan took alone. Investor calls Christy handled without looping Elena in. At first, Elena brushed it off. She was busy. They were all busy. Delegation was part of scaling a business. She could not micromanage everything. But there were moments, tiny, fleeting moments that felt wrong. The way Ryan's phone screen went dark the second she walked into a room. The way Christy avoided eye contact during board meetings. The inside jokes that stopped including her. The late nights Ryan claimed he was working, but his location showed somewhere else entirely. The subtle shift in how they spoke to her. Less like partners, more like they were managing her. Elena told herself she was being paranoid. Stress did that. It made you see shadows where there was only light. She was just tired, overworked, letting her imagination run wild. She was wrong. The affair between Ryan and Christy had started 6 months before everything fell apart. It began, as these things often do, with a late night at the office. Elena had gone home early for once, fighting off a migraine that had been building all day. She had kissed Ryan goodbye, told him not to work too late, and driven home with the windows down, hoping the fresh air would help. Ryan and Christy stayed behind to finish a presentation for an investor meeting scheduled for the next morning. At first, it was just work, numbers, slides, talking points. But as the hours stretched and the office grew quiet around them, the conversation shifted. Christy mentioned feeling underappreciated, how she worked just as hard as Elena but somehow always felt like she was in her shadow, how investors always directed their questions to Elena, even when Christy was the one who had done the research. Ryan listened, really listened, and somewhere in that listening, he found himself agreeing. He had been feeling it too, he admitted. The sense that Elena's idealism was holding them back, that her refusal to compromise on certain values was costing them opportunities, that maybe, just maybe, the company would be better off with leadership that was willing to be more aggressive, more willing to take risks. Christy leaned closer, agreed, said all the things Ryan had been thinking but had not dared to say out loud. And then, in a moment neither of them planned, their hands touched across the table. The first kiss was impulsive, guilty. They pulled away immediately, both of them shaking their heads, promising it would not happen again. Christy gathered her things and left quickly, her face flushed. Ryan sat alone in the empty office, feeling sick with shame. But the next day, when they saw each other, something had changed. There was a charge in the air between them, an unspoken understanding, a secret that bound them together. It happened again a week later, then again, and again. Within weeks, they were meeting in secret, hotel rooms during lunch breaks. Christy would text Ryan that she was running errands, and he would meet her at a place they both knew Elena would never find them. They justified it in different ways. Christy told herself that she deserved happiness, that Elena had everything and she had nothing, that this was just evening the scales. Ryan convinced himself that what Elena did not know would not hurt her, that he could have both, that he was managing the situation. But it was not just about the affair. If it had been, maybe it would have ended differently. Maybe guilt would have caught up with them. Maybe one of them would have confessed. But somewhere along the way, between stolen kisses and whispered promises, they started talking about something else. About the company, about Elena, about what it would take to move forward without her. Ryan was the one who planted the seed. He said it casually one night, lying beside Christy in a hotel room that smelled like cheap air freshener and bad decisions. What if Elena stepped down? What if she decided the company was not for her anymore? Christy, desperate to keep Ryan's attention and validate her own betrayal, latched onto the idea. What if they could run Elevation together? Just the two of them. They understood the business. They knew what needed to be done. Elena was brilliant, sure, but she was also stubborn, idealistic, too focused on the mission and not enough on the money. Ryan agreed, started building on the idea. They could do this. They could make it work. They just needed a plan. And so, quietly, carefully, they started building one. They spent months laying the groundwork. Ryan handled the legal side. He restructured contracts, making subtle changes that Elena signed without reading because she trusted him. He moved assets into accounts Elena did not have access to, claiming it was for tax purposes, for better financial management. He created shell companies that existed only on paper, funneling money in ways that would be nearly impossible to trace. Christy handled the relationships. She cultivated friendships with key investors, planting seeds of doubt about Elena's leadership. Nothing overt, just casual comments. Observations about how Elena seemed overwhelmed, how she was struggling with the pressure, how maybe she needed to take a step back for her own health. And Elena, trusting them completely, never suspected a thing. She signed papers without reading them because Ryan told her they were standard. She delegated tasks to Christy because she believed Christy had her best interests at heart. She ignored the small warning signs because she loved them, because she believed that love meant trust. That family meant loyalty. She was wrong. The truth arrived on a cold March morning. Elena woke up early, kissed Ryan on the forehead as he slept, and drove to the office with a presentation loaded on her laptop. They were pitching to a major investor that afternoon, and she wanted to run through it one more time. She grabbed her usual oat milk latte from the coffee shop downstairs, rode the elevator to the 10th floor, and swiped her key card at the door. Access denied. She frowned, tried again. Denied. A knot formed in her stomach. This had to be a technical glitch. It happened sometimes. She knocked on the glass door. No answer. She called Ryan. Straight to voicemail. She called Christy. Same thing. She tried the main office line. A voice she did not recognize answered. "This is Elena Vargas. I am locked out of the office. Can someone let me in?" A pause, then colder now. "Miss Vargas is no longer with the company." Her heart stopped. "What are you talking about? I am Elena Vargas. I founded this company." Another pause. "You will need to speak with Mr. Mitchell about that." The line went dead. Elena stood in that hallway for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Her hands shook. Her vision blurred. This was not real. It could not be real. There had to be an explanation. A mistake. A misunderstanding. She called her bank. The automated system informed her that her accounts had been frozen due to suspicious activity. She called her lawyer, the one who had helped set up Elevation's initial contracts. "Miss Vargas, I am not sure how to tell you this, but according to the documents filed last week, you signed over your shares and stepped down as co-founder. It is all legally binding." "I never signed anything like that." "Your signature is on file. I have copies right here." Forged, it had to be, but proving that would take time. Money, resources she no longer had. Elena went home, the apartment she shared with Ryan. Their apartment. Decorated with furniture they had picked out together. filled with memories of a life she thought was real. Ryan was not there. His clothes were gone. The photos of them together had been removed from the walls. The closet that used to hold his suits was empty. The bathroom counter where his cologne used to sit was bare. On the kitchen counter, next to the coffee maker they used every morning, sat her engagement ring mocking her. Next to it was a note. Short, clinical, devastating. "I am sorry it had to be this way. You are too soft for this industry. I did what I had to do." No explanation, no remorse, just a cold, calculated exit. Elena read the note 3 times. Each time, the words felt less real. This could not be happening. Not Ryan. Not the man who had proposed to her. Not the man who had looked her in the eyes and promised forever. She called Christy. This time she answered. "Christy, what is happening? Please tell me you are not part of this." Silence, long enough to be an answer. "I am sorry, Elena." Christy's voice was shaky but resolute. "But Ryan and I, we just make sense. And the company needed stronger leadership. You are brilliant, but you are not built for the ruthless side of business. We are." "We," Elena's voice cracked. "You and Ryan." "For 6 months now. I did not mean for it to happen, but it did. And honestly, it is better this way for everyone. You are my best friend." "I was your best friend. People change, priorities shift. You will understand someday." "How could you do this to me?" Christy sighed, like she was explaining something obvious to a child. "Because you were in the way. We tried to work with you, but you would not compromise. You would not listen. So we did what we had to do to protect the company." "Protect the company. You stole it from me." "We saved it from you. There is a difference." The line went dead. Elena stood in the apartment that no longer felt like home, holding a phone that suddenly felt like a weapon. She wanted to scream, to throw things, to break every dish in the kitchen and tear every curtain from the walls. But she did not. She just stood there, empty, erased. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of phone calls, legal consultations, and sleepless nights. Elena tried to fight back. She hired a lawyer with the little money she had left in a savings account Ryan did not know about. But the evidence was overwhelming. Her signature was on every document. The paperwork was airtight. The new board had already been established. Ryan and Christy had planned this perfectly. Word spread fast in their industry. Elena Vargas, the once promising entrepreneur, had been pushed out of her own company. Some people whispered that she was not competent enough to handle the pressure. Others said she had a breakdown. A few suggested she deserved it for being naive enough to trust the wrong people. No one knew the truth, and the few who might have cared did not reach out. In the tech world, failure was contagious. People avoided her like she carried a disease. Elena became a ghost. She deleted her social media, stopped answering calls from numbers she recognized, let her lease expire and moved into a cheap studio apartment on the edge of the city where no one knew her name. The apartment was small, cramped, and smelled faintly of mildew, but it was hers, and no one could take it from her. She survived on the savings she had stashed away. It was not much, enough for a few months if she was careful. She stopped eating out, stopped buying anything that was not absolutely necessary. She learned to cook cheap meals, rice and beans, pasta with canned sauce, peanut butter sandwiches. Some days, she barely ate at all. For a while, she considered giving up entirely. What was the point? They had won. They had taken everything, her company, her money, her future, her identity. But late one night, sitting on the floor of that tiny apartment with her laptop open and her mind racing, something shifted. She thought about Ryan and Christy, thought about them running Elevation, making decisions, taking credit for her ideas, living the life she had built. And she realized something. She did not want revenge. Revenge was loud, messy, emotional. Revenge was what broken people did when they had nothing left to lose. Elena wanted something better. She wanted justice, and she wanted to make sure that when she rose again, it would be so complete, so undeniable, that Ryan and Christy would spend the rest of their lives knowing they had not beaten her. They had only delayed her. So she made a choice. She would disappear, completely. Elena Vargas would cease to exist. And in her place, someone new would take shape, someone stronger, smarter, untouchable. The transformation did not happen overnight. It took months of careful planning and deliberate action, and it was harder than anything Elena had ever done. The first few weeks after moving into that tiny studio apartment were the darkest of her life. She would wake up some mornings and forget, just for a moment, that everything had changed. Then reality would crash back in, the empty apartment, the silence, the absence of everything she had built. Some days she could not get out of bed. The weight of what had happened pressed down on her like a physical thing. She would lie there, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every sign she had missed, every conversation that should have warned her, every choice that had led her to this place. But on other days, something else emerged, a spark of anger, not the hot, explosive kind, the cold, focused kind, the kind that built slow and steady, like a fire that refused to go out. Those were the days she worked. The first step was research. Elena spent weeks studying cybersecurity, data protection, corporate espionage. She had always been good with technology, but now she dove deeper than she ever had before. She turned her studio apartment into a makeshift command center. Laptop, notepads, textbooks ordered used from online sellers, empty coffee cups stacked beside her desk. She took online courses under fake names, enrolled in certification programs that taught her about network security, ethical hacking, data encryption. She read white papers written by industry experts, joined forums where hackers and security specialists shared knowledge, places where people talked openly about finding vulnerabilities, about penetration testing, about the art of protecting digital assets. She learned how companies protected their secrets and, more importantly, how they failed too. She studied every loophole, every vulnerability, every mistake that left businesses exposed. She read about major data breaches and dissected them. What went wrong? Where the cracks were? How it could have been prevented? She became an expert, not in weeks, not in months, but slowly, deliberately, one lesson at a time. At night, when the studying became too much, when her eyes blurred from staring at screens, she would think about Ryan and Christy, about what they had taken from her, and she would make herself a promise. They would not win. Not permanently. She would rise again, and when she did, it would be on her terms. The second step was building a network. Quietly, carefully, strategically. Elena knew she could not do this alone. She needed allies, people who believed in her capabilities even if they did not know her full story. She started by reaching out to old contacts from college, people who had gone into law, finance, tech, people who had not been part of her startup world, who did not know about Elevation or the Betrayal, people who remembered her from before, when she was just Elena, smart, driven, capable. She crafted emails carefully, professional, friendly, brief. She did not ask for money, she did not ask for favors, she asked for advice, for introductions, for coffee meetings where she could pick their brains about the industry. Most people were happy to help. They remembered her fondly, thought she was reaching out to reconnect. They had no idea they were helping her build the foundation for a comeback. One of those contacts introduced her to a small tech firm in Seattle that needed cybersecurity consultation. The owner was skeptical at first. Eldora Hale had no track record, no portfolio, no references beyond the person who had made the introduction. But Elena, now Eldora, came prepared. She had researched the company thoroughly, knew their weak points before she walked in the door. During the consultation, she demonstrated vulnerabilities in their system in real time, showed them exactly how a bad actor could exploit their infrastructure, then showed them how to fix it. They hired her on the spot. She spent 2 weeks embedded with their team, fixed their security protocols, implemented new systems, trained their staff, and when she left, they were safer than they had ever been. They paid her well, and more importantly, they referred her to another company. That was how it started. One client, then another. Word of mouth in an industry where trust was currency. Eldora Hale became known as the person you called when you needed someone discreet, brilliant and ruthless about protecting your business. Within 6 months, she had a reputation. Within a year, she had a waiting list. Elena worked harder than she ever had before. 16-hour days, 7-day weeks. She had no social life, no hobbies, no distractions. Every ounce of energy went into building something that could not be taken from her, something that existed entirely on her terms. She learned to be strategic in ways she had never been before. With elevation, she had led with her heart, with passion, with the belief that if you built something good, success would follow. Now she led with her head, with precision, with the understanding that business was not about being good. It was about being smart, about anticipating threats, about building systems so tight that betrayal was impossible. She studied how Ryan had stolen from her and made sure those same tactics could never be used against her again. She created contracts that were airtight, hired lawyers who specialized in protecting intellectual property, built a corporate structure with multiple layers of protection, diversified her revenue streams so no single client or partner could hold power over her. She also started collecting information, not just on her own business, but on Ryan's, on Mitchell Tech. She set up Google alerts, monitored their press releases, tracked their investor filings, watched from a distance as the company she had built began to show cracks. At first, it was small things: a negative review from a client, an employee complaint on a forum, a lawsuit filed and quietly settled. But over time, the cracks widened. Data breaches that should not have happened, security failures that revealed deeper problems, investor concerns that began appearing in trade publications. Ryan and Christy were struggling, and Elena watched it happen with cold, clinical interest. She did not celebrate their failures. She documented them. Every misstep, every mistake, every corner they cut. She saved screenshots, downloaded public filings, built a timeline of their decline. Because she knew, even then, that this information might be useful someday, that there might come a moment when she would need it, when the opportunity would present itself. And when it did, she would be ready. The third step was the hardest. She had to let go of who she used to be. Elena Vargas had been warm, open, trusting. She believed in people. She gave second chances. She led with her heart. That version of her was gone, dead, buried beneath the rubble of broken trust and stolen dreams. The woman who emerged from the ashes was different, sharper, colder, strategic. She did not trust easily, and she never forgot a lesson. She saw people for what they were, not what they claimed to be. She built walls high and thick, and she did not let anyone climb them without proving themselves first. She chose a new name, Eldora Hale. It sounded strong, professional, untouchable. Eldora Hale did not have a tragic backstory. She did not have a betrayal hanging over her head. She was simply a consultant who specialized in cybersecurity for startups. She helped companies protect their intellectual property, secure their data, and build systems that could not be exploited. And then she did something bold, something risky, something that would either launch her into a new stratosphere or destroy her completely. She started her own firm. Not a startup this time, not a scrappy underdog story, a fully formed, expertly structured cybersecurity company with airtight contracts, diversified revenue streams, and a board of advisors who were some of the sharpest minds in the industry. She called it Hale Security Solutions. She funded it with the money she had made consulting, hired a small team of specialists she had vetted carefully, built a brand that radiated competence and reliability. She did not chase clients. She made them come to her. And they did. Hale Security Solutions grew fast, faster than Elevation ever had. Because this time, Elena was not building on hope and passion. She was building on strategy and precision. She knew where the vulnerabilities were. She knew how people like Ryan operated. And she made sure her company was immune to every trick he had pulled on her. Governments noticed. Fortune 500 companies noticed. International agencies noticed. Within 2 years, Hale Security Solutions was fielding offers from clients Elena could only have dreamed of in her Elevation days. And then one day, a request came through that made her pause. Mitchell Tech wanted to hire her. Ryan's company, the one he had stolen from her, the one he and Christy were running into the ground. The irony was almost poetic. Elena opened the email and read it slowly. Mitchell Tech was in trouble, serious trouble, data breaches, lawsuits from clients, internal leaks, a whistleblower who had exposed shady financial practices to the press. Investors were pulling out. Employees were quitting. The press was circling like sharks smelling blood in the water. Ryan was desperate, and Eldora Hale was the best in the business. He had no idea who she really was. Elena stared at the email for a long time. She could ignore it. She could decline politely and move on with her life. She could let Ryan crash and burn on his own, knowing that karma had finally caught up with him. But that was not enough. She wanted to look him in the eye. She wanted him to know what he had lost. She wanted him to feel the same helplessness she had felt standing in that hallway, locked out of her own office. She accepted the meeting. The offices of Mitchell Tech were nothing like she remembered. Elevation had been vibrant, energetic, filled with the kind of optimism that comes from building something new. Mitchell Tech felt hollow. The paint was chipping. The furniture looked cheap. The plants in the lobby were dying. The energy was tense, frantic, like everyone was trying to outrun a fire they could not put out. Elena walked in wearing a tailored black suit, her hair pulled back into a sleek bun, her expression unreadable. She looked like someone who could buy and sell companies without blinking. She looked like someone who had never been hurt, never been broken, never been betrayed. She looked nothing like the woman Ryan had destroyed. The receptionist led her to the conference room. Glass walls, a long table, a view of the city that used to inspire her. Now it just looked cold. Ryan walked in first. He looked older, tired. The confidence he used to carry like armor was gone, replaced by something desperate and hollow. There were bags under his eyes. His suit did not fit quite right. His smile was forced. He stopped when he saw her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them crackled with something unspoken. Recognition, shock, fear. Then Christy walked in behind him, and the room temperature dropped. Christy's face went white. She gripped the back of a chair like she might fall. Her mouth opened, then closed. No words came out. Elena. Ryan's voice was barely a whisper. Elena smiled. It was small, controlled, and cold. That name does not exist anymore. Ryan recovered faster than Christy. He always did. He was good at that. Good at pretending. Good at adapting. He forced a smile, gestured to the table, tried to reclaim some semblance of control. This is unexpected. I did not realize Eldora Hale was, well, you. Would you have taken the meeting if you did? He did not answer. He did not need to. They both knew the truth. Christy sat down slowly, her eyes never leaving Elena's face. She looked smaller than Elena remembered. Less certain, like the weight of her choices had finally caught up with her. What are you doing here? Christy's voice cracked. You asked for my help, Elena said simply. I am here to decide if you deserve it. Ryan leaned forward, trying to regain control of the conversation. Look, whatever happened between us, it is in the past. This is business. We need your expertise and you need clients. Let us keep it professional. Elena opened her tablet. The screen glowed in the dim light of the conference room. She tapped it once. The wall monitor behind her lit up. Documents filled the screen. Emails, bank transfers, forged signatures, shell companies, offshore accounts. A timeline that stretched back years. Ryan's face drained of color. What is this? Evidence, Elena said calmly. 2 years of it, every corner you cut, every lie you told, every dollar you stole, not just from me, from your investors, your employees, your clients. Christy stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor with a sound that made everyone flinch. You cannot do this. I already did. Elena tapped the screen again. A new document appeared, official letterhead, government seals, reports filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Federal Trade Commission, the State Attorney General. I have been feeding information to the authorities for months, Elena continued, her voice steady and calm. Quietly, carefully, building a case so airtight that no lawyer, no matter how expensive, could dismantle it. Ryan's hands were shaking now. He tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Why? Elena looked at him, really looked at him. This man who had shared her bed, her dreams, her life. This man who had looked her in the eyes and promised forever, then destroyed her without a second thought. Because you thought I was too soft, too trusting, too weak to fight back. Elena's voice was steady, but there was steel underneath. You were wrong. Sirens echoed faintly in the distance, growing louder, closer. Christy's eyes widened in panic. What did you do? Elena stood, smoothing her suit with deliberate calm. I finished what you started. The doors burst open. Federal agents flooded the room like water breaking through a dam. Badges flashed. Commands were shouted. The room erupted into chaos. Ryan tried to speak, tried to argue, tried to explain, but his words were drowned out by the noise, by the reality crashing down around him. Christy broke down. She sobbed, reaching for Elena with shaking hands. Please, we were friends, we were family. Elena looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just a cold, quiet emptiness where their friendship used to live. You stopped being my family the moment you chose him over me. The agents led them away in handcuffs. Ryan shouted threats, his voice raw and desperate. Christy cried, her mascara running down her face in black streaks. The office erupted into chaos as employees realized what was happening. Elena walked out the same way she walked in, calm, controlled, untouchable. Behind her, the empire built on lies crumbled into dust. The headlines hit within hours. Tech CEO arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scandal. Former business partners charged with corporate espionage and financial crimes. Whistleblower behind massive takedown remains anonymous. Elena did not read them. She did not need to. She knew what they would say. She knew how the story would be told. She flew to a different city that same night, booked a penthouse with a view of the ocean, poured herself a glass of wine and stood on the balcony, letting the wind pull at her hair and the salt air fill her lungs. For the first time in 2 years, she felt light, like a weight she had been carrying had finally been lifted. You could have destroyed them sooner. She turned. Adrian Cole stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame with that easy smile he always wore. He was a corporate attorney she had met during her rebuilding phase, back when Eldora Hale was just getting started. He had helped her navigate some early contracts, offered advice when she needed it, never asked for anything in return. He did not know about Ryan or Christy, did not know about the betrayal. He only knew Eldora, the strong, competent, successful version of her. And he had stayed, even when she kept him at arm's length, even when she made it clear she was not ready for anything beyond professional courtesy. Patient, kind, real. I did not want revenge, Elena said softly. He raised an eyebrow, walking toward her. You just took down 2 people who destroyed your life. That sounds like revenge to me. She shook her head. Revenge is emotional. What I did was strategic. I wanted justice. And I wanted to make sure they could never do to anyone else what they did to me. Adrian stopped beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. And now I move forward. As Eldora. She paused, thought about it. Elena Vargas had been broken, betrayed, erased, but she had also been brave, hopeful, human. Eldora Hale was strong, untouchable, successful, but she was also a shell, a construct built to survive, not to live. I do not know yet, she admitted. Maybe I am someone in between. Adrian smiled. I think that is the best version. She looked at him, and for the first time since the betrayal, she let herself feel something other than anger or determination. Hope. You stayed, she said quietly. I did. Why? Because I saw who you were underneath all the armor, and I wanted to be there when you were ready to take it off. Elena felt something crack inside her chest, not breaking, opening. She reached for his hand. His fingers wrapped around hers, warm and steady. I am not ready yet. I know. But I will be. I know that too. They stood there together, looking out at a future that felt wide and infinite and finally hers. Months passed. The trial was public and brutal. Every major news outlet covered it. Ryan and Christy's faces were plastered across headlines. The evidence Elena had gathered was ironclad. Forged documents, embezzled funds, breach of fiduciary duty, fraud on a scale that made national news. Ryan tried to claim he had been manipulated, that he was protecting the company, that Elena had abandoned it. His lawyers painted him as a victim of circumstance. The jury did not buy it. Christy tried to claim she did not know the extent of his crimes, that she had been in love and blinded by it, that she never meant to hurt anyone. The jury did not buy that either. They were both sentenced to federal prison. Ryan got 12 years, Christy got 8. Their reputations were destroyed beyond repair. Their assets were seized to pay restitution to the people they had defrauded. The company they stole collapsed entirely, leaving hundreds of employees jobless and investors furious. Elena watched the verdict from a coffee shop in another city, her laptop open to a live stream of the courtroom. She felt no satisfaction, no joy, just a quiet sense of closure. It was over. She closed the laptop and sat there for a while, sipping her coffee and watching people walk by outside. Normal people, living normal lives. Unaware that just a few miles away, 2 people were being led to prison for crimes they thought they would get away with. Elena felt nothing for them anymore. Not anger, not pity, just indifference. They were strangers now, ghosts from a life she no longer lived. She sold Hale's Security Solutions a few weeks later. A larger firm had been courting her for months, offering a sum that would make her financially secure for the rest of her life. She could have kept building, could have turned it into an empire that dwarfed anything Ryan had ever dreamed of. But she did not want that anymore. She wanted something smaller, something real, something that mattered in a way that went beyond profit margins and quarterly reports. She started a nonprofit, a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs who had been exploited, betrayed, or pushed out of their own companies. She taught them how to protect themselves, how to build systems that could not be stolen, how to rise after a fall. She called it the Second Founding. And she ran it under her real name, Elena Vargas. Because Eldora Hale had served her purpose. She had been the armor Elena needed to survive, but armor was heavy, and Elena was tired of carrying it. The nonprofit grew slowly, but it grew. Elena worked with young founders, mostly women, who had been taken advantage of. She taught them about contracts, about protecting their intellectual property, about recognizing red flags before it was too late. She shared her story, not all of it, but enough. And people listened. Adrian stayed, not because he had to, because he wanted to. They did not rush, did not force it, just let it unfold naturally. Dinners that turned into long conversations, walks that turned into shared silences, mornings that started with coffee and ended with laughter. He met the version of her that existed somewhere between the woman she used to be and the woman she had become. The version that was still healing, but no longer hiding. And he loved her, all of her, the broken parts, the strong parts, the parts still figuring out how to exist in the world. One evening, a year after the trial, Elena received a letter. It arrived in a plain envelope with no return address. The handwriting was familiar, too familiar. Christy. Elena almost did not open it, almost threw it away, but curiosity won. The letter was short, handwritten on prison stationery. I know I do not deserve forgiveness. I know what we did was unforgivable, but I need you to know that I think about it every day. I destroyed the best friendship I ever had for a man who did not even love me. He used me the same way we used you. And now I am here and you are out there living a life I can only imagine. I am not asking you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that you were right. About everything. I hope you are happy. I hope you are free. You deserve that. Elena read it twice. Then she folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer. She did not write back. Some bridges, once burned, were meant to stay ash. But she did not carry the anger anymore either. She had let it go, not for Christy, for herself. Because holding on to it would have meant they still had power over her. And they did not. Not anymore. Elena stood on the same balcony where she had stood the night Ryan and Christy were arrested. But this time, Adrian was beside her. This time, the weight on her chest was gone. This time, the future did not feel like a battle. It felt like a gift. "Do you ever regret it?" Adrian asked. "Going after them the way you did?" Elena thought about it, really thought about it. "No," she said finally, "but not because of what happened to them, because of what happened to me." "What do you mean?" "They did not just steal my company. They stole my belief in people, my ability to trust, my sense of safety. If I had let them get away with it, I would have spent the rest of my life afraid, wondering when the next betrayal would come. This way, I took my power back, and I proved to myself that I could survive anything." Adrian nodded slowly. "You did not just survive. You rebuilt yourself into something they could never touch." Elena smiled. "Exactly." She looked out at the city lights, stretching endlessly before her. Somewhere out there, Ryan and Christy were sitting in prison cells, their lives reduced to regret and consequences. And somewhere out here, Elena was free. Not because she had destroyed them, but because she had refused to let them destroy her. She had loved, she had lost, she had been betrayed in the worst way imaginable. But she had also risen, she had fought, she had rebuilt herself from nothing. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all. Not revenge, not justice, but freedom. The freedom to choose who she wanted to be. The freedom to trust again, even if it took time. The freedom to love without fear, even if it scared her. Ryan and Christy had taken everything from her. But they had not taken the one thing that mattered most. Her ability to begin again. And that, Elena realized, was something no one could ever steal. She turned to Adrian, took his hand and smiled. "Let us go home." He squeezed her hand gently. "Lead the way." And together, they walked into a future built not on what had been taken, but on what could never be destroyed. Hope, resilience, and the quiet, unshakable knowledge that no matter how far you fall, you can always rise again. Stronger, wiser, free.